Okay, boys and girls, this lesson is going to ask us to solve systems of equations by graphing to determine the number of solutions. So, or just to determine the one solution. I think many of these problems will have one solution. So, what is the exact point where these two lines will cross? That's the question. So we have a system here. We have x plus 3y equals 18 and 7x plus 3y equals 0. You remember yesterday I taught you that when the equations are in this form, ax plus by equals c, that the slope, and you want to take notes on this if you don't remember, or even just take them again so you can remember and it becomes second nature. The slope is negative a over b, and the y-intercept is c over b. And so, if you look at the first equation, call this equation 1 and call this equation 2. If you look at the first equation, negative a over b, the slope of equation 1, and I'll list them over here, the slope of equation 1 is negative 1, that's negative a, that's the coefficient in front of x, over 3, that's b. And the y-intercept, call that y-intercept of equation 1, is c over b, and that's 18 over 3, which is 18 divided by 3 is 6. Now let's do equation 2. The slope of equation 2 is negative a over b, which is negative 7 over 3. Negative 7 over 3. And the y-intercept of equation 2 is c over b. But c is 0, and 0 divided by anything is 0. So if you put these things on a graph, if you just plot the y-intercept at 6, for example, like right there, let me see if I can, I don't think I can get it exactly with this pen, but the y-intercept of 6 is like right there. Let me try and use a bigger pen. The y-intercept is 6 right there, and if you count down 1 and over 3, you're going to end up somewhere like pretty close to right there. So you would draw the line like that, and then you would plot the other line, equation 2. If the y-intercept is at 0, then you count down 7 and over 3, and you're going to end up somewhere like right there, and then you draw that line, and you try to figure out exactly where these lines are crossing, the intersecting point, which is right there. If you open up the graphing tool and do just what I showed you, then you should be able to see the exact point where these lines cross, and that will be your answer. And here's how that works. Here's the graphing tool. So you click on the line option, which is right here where I just made the dot, and you plot the y-intercept and count the slope, rise and run, and draw the lines, and you'll be able to see exactly where those lines meet. So this is the last part of the problem. It would just ask you to type in the ordered pair where you saw the lines cross, which is right here. Do you see it? Right there. You just type in those coordinates. And so it looks like that is what? Negative 3, 7. It looks like, tell me if you agree, negative 3, 7. Okay, this problem gives us a system in a slightly different way. It says the cost of renting a canoe on River Y costs $24. The cost of renting a canoe to use on River Z costs $2 per hour plus a $14 deposit. And finally, the total cost C of renting a canoe on either river for n hours can be represented by an equation. Okay, so write and graph a system to find how many hours you can rent a canoe for the cost to be the same on both rivers. So in other words, River Y, hang on, let me change pen. River Y is going to cost, the cost is going to be $24. And for River Z, the cost is going to be $2 per hour plus 14. So all you're looking for is an answer that shows these equations for the correct river. Okay? So what does that look like? Which one do you think it is? Take a minute to look at that. I think it actually might be D, but it's cut off. Yeah, it was choice D. I scrolled down a little bit, and now it says graph the system of equations and choose the correct answer below. All right, well, we know that for this equation, the y-intercept is 0. So one line has to be going, the slope is 0 for river y. It's not changing, it's constant at 24. So that line is going to be a straight line right at the point y equals 24 and just going straight across like this. And then this line is going to be starting at y equals 14 with a slope of 2. And so let's figure out what that looks like. There has to be a straight line at y equals 24, and actually you can see that D is the only choice because that's the only one that starts at 24 and goes straight across. And then the other line is going to be hitting it somewhere in the middle there. Okay, this problem says graph the system and determine the solution. We got this. Okay. Remember that if they are in the form ax plus by equals c, that the slope is equal to negative a over b, and the y-intercept is equal to c over b. So if this is equation 1 and this is equation 2, the slope of equation 1 is negative a, which is, well, the x term for equation 1, the coefficient is 1, so negative a is negative 1 over b, which is 5, it's the coefficient in front of y. And the y-intercept of equation 1 is c over b, which is 5 over 5, which is 1. And the slope of equation 2 is negative a over b, which is negative 2 over 10, which if you reduce that is negative 1 over 5, just like equation 1. And the y-intercept of equation 2 is c over b, which is 80 over 10, which is just 8. So you can see that what we have here is a situation where we have the same exact slopes, but we have different y-intercepts. What does that mean? You should know from yesterday. It means there's going to be no solution and these lines are going to be parallel. So you can see what we do. It says, what is the solution? And we say, well, there is no solution because these lines are parallel. Okay, another problem that asks us to graph and determine the solution of the system of equations. Okay, so slope of equation 1 is, it is in the form ax plus by equals c. So that is negative 1 over 2, and the y-intercept is 0 divided by 2, which is 0. And the slope of equation 2, now that is not in ax plus by equals c form, and so we have to take that equation and simply divide by 6 on both sides and solve for y. So y equals negative 1/2 x. So we can see this equation is in y equals mx plus b form, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So negative 1/2 is the slope, and you can see it's the exact same as equation 1, and so that either means they're going to be parallel and no solution, or they're going to be the exact same line. And you can see that since there's nothing at the end, there's no plus b in equation 2, it's plus 0. So again, the y-intercept for equation 2 is 0. And I just realized I made a mistake and probably confused you. This is not the y-intercept for equation 2, this is a y-intercept for equation 1. But you can see that all the terms are identical. Same y-intercepts, same slopes. That means the exact same line, which means infinite number of solutions. Okay, here we have a word problem. Don't shy away from these. You have to learn how to do these. You have to be patient. You have to be persistent, and you have to apply yourself. So I'll take you through it. It says the cost of making copies at store W is $5, regardless how many copies you make, which seems like a ridiculous deal. Because if you only need one copy, you just paid $5. But if you need 1,000 copies, that sounds pretty good. Then it says the cost of making copies at store Z is 20 cents per copy plus a $2 charge. And the total cost C of making any number of copies at either store can be represented by an equation. Okay, so we can write it down. Then it tells us we're going to write and graph a system. We're going to use pencil and paper so you can do it in your notes. If you have to make a small number of copies, which store would you go to? And if you have to make a large number of copies, which store would you go to? And then explain. Okay, so write the system of equations. So at store W, oops, I always do that. At store W, the cost is $5. At store Z, the cost is 20 cents per copy, and copies are n, so it's 0.20. That's 20 cents per copy times n, plus $2 charge, plus 2. So just look for the answer that has those matching numbers for the right store, and you'll be in good shape. Now it asks us to graph the system of equations. Okay, so since one store charges a flat $5 fee, we are definitely looking for a flat line at y equals 5. And so it looks like either B or D qualify, because that blue line is right there at 5. But which red line shows the cost of 20 cents per copy plus 2? Well, it can't be D. Can you see why? Because this red line starts at the origin, but we need to start at positive 2. So that's why right here B shows the correct start of the red line, and so it would be choice B. Okay, just a couple more problems, boys and girls. This one says think about the process. So let's see what we can do. It says which point on the graph is the solution of the system of equations? So use the graph to determine it. Well, this is pretty simple. All we have to do is, let me change my pen size here. It's a little bigger. We have to see where this point is right there, and then try to just write down the coordinate pair. What point is that? Well, we might not even have to go that far, because look at the answer choices. Is it the point where the lines intersect each other, or the point where the lines intersect the y-axis, or the point where the lines intersect the x-axis, or where they intersect the origin? And of course we know it's where they intersect each other, right? And now it's asking us to type in an ordered pair for our answer. And so if we focus right there where the lines intersect, that looks like it is at -4, -5. Tell me if you agree about that. And that, boys and girls, should be enough to help you get through your assignment. I'll be around for help. If you have questions, just raise your hand and let me know.